Good morning. My name is Natalie Krastev. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and here's my personal story. My family was not religious growing up. We attended Methodist church for a little while when I was very young. I was always a short kid, so one of the only things I regularly remember being able to see during service was the offering plate floating past me. The rest of the service was a sea of heads before me. I always wondered what the plate was for, but it was as enigmatic to me as the service itself. During one service, I remember being called up with a bunch of other kids and being handed a gold-covered Good News Bible. We all sat there in the front for a while, bemused, with a rather stoic congregation staring at us while the minister tried to impress upon us the importance of that book we had. My family didn't attend that church much longer after that fateful day, but I still have that book. I have an extremely complicated relationship with my family, and as a result, as I grew, I felt an aching lack of connection. I remembered how often people talked about the Father, and I thought, hey, I'd like to have one of those that likes me, and I always hear that Jesus loves me from religious folks, so I'll go read that Bible I was given at service. After plowing into Genesis and agonizingly picking through the bulk of the rest of it, I didn't really find I felt any more loved. At one point, trying to summon some sense of connection and acceptance, I decided to start my own little religion. I saved my money carefully, and I bought some rabbit skin pelts for an altar, and I absconded with some candles and candlesticks from my parents' house. And at night, I would set up these little items on a stool in my room, and I would pray for an ancestor to come to me that would love me. I would strike poses of power and supplication in front of my little altar, and I convinced myself that my great-grandmother had come to me for a while, and she would put the taste of butterscotch in my mouth when I was at my saddest. But my childish confidence and my imagination gave way to adolescence, and so I lost that sense of someone being with me in my darkness. At 15, in a moment of crisis, I made my way to my local library. I borrowed a book by Thich Nhat Hanh called The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching. It opened with a promise that the Buddhist heart was open to me because he shared and understood my suffering, and I wept at feeling the rush of acceptance. I read that book many, many, many times, but I found that the Buddhist communities I tried to connect with didn't necessarily practice that same acceptance in reality. I was Baha'i for about 2 years. The idea, again, of Baha'u'llah loving me was intoxicating during another low point in my life. I even read my prayer book while I was jogging because I was so thirsty to feel that wash of love. I do not recommend this. But my question about what we were supposed to believe was never satisfyingly answered by the congregation. And many of our meetings came down to tossing around accusations of why we weren't all donating more money to the temple. Donating money to a mission of faith is important, but I wasn't sure I knew what our goals were if I couldn't even answer questions about my faith clearly. I never donated much. I had a long period of avoiding religion altogether. I married my husband in an Orthodox church, and as I was experiencing a paradigm shift within myself away from organized religion and towards agnosticism. Some of this change in my thinking came from an incredibly traumatic year that was punctuated by the birth of my oldest son. As I looked into his tiny face, I realized I wanted his experiences with religion and parenting to be different than mine. I needed to do things differently. It took me a long time to find CCUU. At first, I was reticent, waiting to feel the same disappointment I've felt so many times before. But as I kept coming back to Countryside, I heard in the voices here the acceptance I'd waited for so long from a metaphysical entity. But instead, it was from people. And that acceptance wasn't just for me. It was for everyone. I heard space and respect for other people's beliefs and a genuine desire to uplift and support. I felt so afraid to be let down again, but hope grew in my heart, and not just for me, but for my boys. My oldest son has a dual diagnosis of ADHD and autism spectrum disorder. His brother likely has the same. Having acceptance when you connect differently, express yourself differently, and think differently can be so challenging. But watching this congregation do so many wonderful things, I heard you all share so much love with the world, and I knew then that there would be space and patience for them here. I felt that even in moments when my boys would struggle, there would be patience and guidance that was rooted in love and respect for human dignity to help them grow. And so I know what the mission here is. I'm not wondering what my money might be going towards. When my family donates to CCUU, we're donating to supporting love and compassion. I am donating to a future where the next generation of children being raised in this environment can share that same love and compassion with the world they go into because they feel it to their core, because you all helped put it there. Giving hasn't always been easy for my family, as it often isn't for many of us. My family personally regularly experiences financial challenges, often medical. So giving is a careful calculation we have to make to include our own well-being. But I know it's worth it. I remember telling Mary Sheldon when we were first joining CCUU that I wish I could tithe, which is the practice of giving 10% of your income to the church. And that's still a goal I hold, because lifting up the dedicated individuals that make RE and Sunday service and all our community work possible feels so valuable. There have been many times I wish I could give more, but it's only because the gift of this community is priceless to me. Thank you.